Welcome to AfriMind. Today we're having a conversation with Dr. Julius Agbo. He's an economist and he's also a research fellow at the Brookings Institution, which is a think tank based in Washington, D.C. Dr. Julius has done a lot of work on colonialism and the impact of colonialism of African economies. So we're going to talk a lot about that. And then we're going to move back to his country, Cameroon, and talk about the economic situation in Cameroon. And then finally, we're going to end with a conversation on the future of the CFA Franc. So thank you once again and welcome to the conversation. Thank you so much for being with us today, Julius.
Thank you.
So you've done a lot of work on monetary policy in Africa, and particularly I saw a recent speech that you gave on the future of the CFA Franc. And so that got me thinking, given that we have Europe, where they currently have a crisis and people are wondering if the euro is too big, so should countries like Greece be part of the euro? It sort of sheds light on the difficulties that monetary unions have. Mm-hmm. And so I want to go back to one of Africa's longest standing, currency boards / monetary unions.
That's right.
And touch on it. So what is the future of the CFA Franc?
Yeah, so my take on that would be that it's going to be a little bit trickish for the Franc zone member countries to effectively achieve monetary union in the real sense of the word. Mm-hmm. Today they are operating a partial monetary union, something they call a currency board. Now, to move to a full currency monetary union, you want to have a common monetary policy. It's just a framework. You say that we're going to have the same currency and we'll fine-tune it in the same way. That is, we'll have a common monetary policy. And for you to do that, it means that you need to produce similar kind of goods, right? But what we observe today in the Franc zone is that one group of countries is mainly oil exporting, and the other ones is cocoa or cotton agricultural product exporting. And so when they are producing different kind of goods, it means that when prices change in the world market, for example, the prices of oil affects everything, affects everything in the economy. When the price of oil jump in the world market, countries that are producing oil that are found in one of the regions that exports oil will be jubilating, and so their monetary policy stance will be how to prevent inflation prices from going up. Whereas the countries that are exporting mainly agricultural products would suffer the pinch of higher oil prices, and so those economies would be in need of resources, and so would have a different approach to monetary policy. So it becomes difficult to have a common monetary and exchange rate policy, which is one of the tenets of a monetary union.
So maybe they shouldn't be a monetary union to begin with. And it begs the question, well, two questions. The first I'll ask is, how is the crisis in Europe going to affect the CFA Franc? Given that, so for the most, you basically go to France basically gives you the euro and you're good.
That's right.
So what happens when France is not in the position to guarantee the CFA Franc?
So definitely, there are many kinds of scenarios that can affect the Franc zone. If the economies continue to export to the Eurozone, trade mostly with the Eurozone, then of course they will be importing all the problems in the Eurozone, right? But we see recently the data seem to suggest that increasingly the Franc zone countries are trading more outside the Eurozone. Okay. For example, the data suggests that the Republic of Congo, almost 70% of its export is not to the Eurozone. And at least 40% of its imports are not from the Eurozone.
Oh, wow.
There is also a case, Gabon, almost 65% of its export does not go to the Eurozone, and at least 30% of its import is not from the Eurozone. So increasingly, most of the countries are moving away from trading with the Eurozone. And so the likely implication for their currency is the raison d'etre of having a monetary union that is linked to the euro will become increasingly less important. It becomes increasingly less important. And so the question might be, going forward, would they want to consider maybe floating their currencies their currency against a basket of currency, whereby you now weight the other different trading partners.
Like
Maybe
China,
if it
for
is
example.
China, then you give a weight to that, the Eurozone, the US. So a currency that fluctuates more or less and reflecting is the changing nature of its trading patterns. So
Okay.
That's why I think it will be sensible going forward.
Do they have a choice? For example, do they have to do something right now? Is the CFA franc sustainable, at least
I think
for
for
the short
now,
to medium term?
For now, the empirical evidence done by the IMF suggests that the CFA franc is secured actually right now. The import levels, the amount of reserves that they have to guarantee the stability of the peg to the euro is far above what is required, the minimum required.
Okay.
But the questions are going forward in a decade or so from now, when oil reserves will be depleted, when oil bases in most of the oil exporting countries will be depleted, a significant source of foreign exchange will be lost, and so it becomes difficult for them to have the amount of reserves that they need to maintain a fixed currency, a fixed exchange rate. So in a decade or so from now, it will become difficult how they maintain that peg arrangement with the CFA, with the French, with the euro. And also the fact that the French treasury that usually provides the anchor for the currency, that guarantees its convertibility. The French treasury guarantees the convertibility of the notes that are issued in the franc zone to the euro. It will be increasingly difficult for France to offer that kind of guarantee, because
Given
it's
the crisis,
basically writing open checks
Yeah.
or lines of credit.
But they're taking reserves,
But today, so yeah, well, in exchange for some partial reserve coverage with the French treasury. But in case those reserves are not longer going to be that much when oil reserves run out, oil bases run out, and it will be increasingly difficult for France to be able to carry out a further fiscal assistance to its former colonies. Then it becomes really very, very tricky how they move forward from there.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
It's my great pleasure.